Okay, well, welcome to latest edition of Tecman Talks Dynamics. We've just gone into February, and I think it's nice to get January out of the way and start to look forward. And one of the things that Microsoft have announced over the last week, talking of looking into the future, is the new features that are coming to Wave 1 of the 2021 release of Business Central. So we thought we'd get together. We've got the full crew in here today. We've got Matt, Liz, and James. Joining myself, Liam, and we're going to have a little chat around what Microsoft have announced and the differences that it can make to everybody's businesses. So I guess if you group those together, Microsoft have put some stuff around new features for the application. So I guess that's new functionality. We've got some stuff that's been added for administration, how we link with M365, Microsoft 365, and how it integrates with the rest of their environment, as well as stuff for clients and developers. So a little bit of everything. But let's start, I'd suggest, with maybe functionality that the end users are going to probably notice. Is there any major headline features that are out there? I don't know if anyone wants to pick that one up.
I guess it depends who the end user is. I think, as usual with this roadmap, there's a whole bunch of application improvements and there's a whole bunch of administration improvements that I guess, us here at Tecman will be really pleased to see, but customers won't really notice too much. And then there's some developer enhancements as well. So depends who it is, where they are, what they're doing, as to which ones they're going to get most excited about.
Yeah, and I guess with the biannual releases now, we're not seeing those huge, big chunks of functionality that used to come in when we had a release every 2 or 3 years. It must be nearly a decade ago now. We went down to annual releases, and now we're every 6 months with monthly little packs being released as well. But in terms of the end user, I would class a classic end user who's trying to do their job on Business Central. Is there anything that they might find useful or will change and be a benefit to them, James?
That you can pick out a lot of little improvements, and there's an argument about how Microsoft would do a big improvement, a big new functional area, whether they will ever do that, when that's going to be on the horizon, given these. Yeah, you're right. NAV 2013 was the first of the kind of annual release cadence one, so we are coming up to close to a decade now. My more control over settings for default dimensions was one that I read and went, quite like that. The ability I can set, for instance, on a GL account, the way I read it, you can set a list of predefined values that are allowed. So previously you could set it was code mandatory or a specific value, but you couldn't allow just this set of values from this dimension against this account. So that's a nice, easy win. It'll take a bit of setting up, going through your GL, setting all of that up against all of them. But I think will give significantly extra flexibility to some customers.
I mean, when it comes to dimensions, it's very easy to mess up your reporting with a few incorrect postings on dimensions. So the new feature that they've also got is correcting dimensions, which I was quite excited about, James, until you ruined my pleasure by explaining the reality of that. So to improve your reporting, you can correct, in this release, you will be able to correct dimensions on GL entries, which is great. And if you're using them to report P&Ls, but for cost centres or budget centres, then that's great because it'll allow you to correct your data and make sure that you're reporting correctly. Unfortunately, it doesn't go as far as correcting the related documents and the related transactions in the background, like the posted invoices. So a useful feature, but may cause some other issues. So we'll see.
I'm old school. My objection to it, Liz, you're right, is the fact that having the dimensions to get your GL fine, that makes your management reporting work. But if you compare it with the report off your item ledger entries, for instance, which is a fairly common one to do, the two don't balance, and we're going to get a lot of support calls saying in 3 years down the line saying, why don't these two match? And
well, I know why they haven't gone beyond GL entries, because having tried to do it in the past for customers, it's really, really difficult. So I wouldn't even bother adding it to the feature list, because I think we have to accept that GL entries and at least maybe historical month-on-month comparison postings you can correct, and that would have to be good enough, I think.
I was wondering exactly how they were going to implement this, and I haven't seen it yet. And I was wondering whether they, now you've got this, it doesn't record the dimensions against every record anymore. It's uses the dimension set ID.
Yeah.
And I was even thinking that although you can edit the dimension set, if you could store the original, what it was posted with, as well as the new set, that might allow you to spot it's been changed, which would be really useful.
Yeah, I would imagine that there should be some audit on changes that are made. So from a finance point of view, they've gone to town on the bank recs again. Again,
being the operative word, yeah.
So someone's been campaigning hard, I think, on the feature request for bank reconciliation changes. So we've got some more of those.
You can cancel or undo a reconciliation as well, which is, I can imagine if you've got a large set of reconciliation to do, that could be quite useful.
Yeah, but I don't know how often people post bank recs wrong.
Yeah, normally they check it balances, don't they, first?
Yeah, I was going to say, the whole purpose of it is that you check it balances, but you never say never.
I mean, a bit on the accounting documentation where it says bank reconciliation is a critical accounting test for most businesses.
Yeah, show us one it isn't.
Yes, I think the most is, how much cash you've got in the bank. It's pretty critical to every business, isn't it? So, but look, simplified bank statement file import. We've all had grief with that. None of the banks seem to be able to agree a standard format, at least here in the UK, and I think it's the same in the US and so on. So that's got to be being able to do that without having to resort to code, I would see as a major step forward. And I hope they actually hit that one this time.
Yeah. So those are the finance bits. What else have we got? I quite like the automatic creation of lot and serial number cards.
Yeah, I like that. We've got our own app to do that. So it's always good when Microsoft bring out their own functionality and we can deprecate our own. So
that's every way we put a couple of things in the bin, don't we, Matt?
Yeah.
Which is good.
I know sometimes, to be fair, our solution is better, so there might still be a case to keep it, but we'll wait and see.
That makes it complicated, doesn't it? Because we have to make the extra bits of our app. Clients don't accept going backwards, so we have to make the extra bits of our app match with the standard stuff.
I think the thing I always notice when you talk about that as well, the caveat with all of these releases is they're not always shipped on day one. It's in that time scale, isn't it? From what I was reading, that it might come April time when this ships, but it might come a month or two later. So you can't put them in the bin too quick, can we? But yeah, when we get there, they'll be there.
We saw that with the 17, BC 17 release last October, where a lot of it didn't ship till 17.2, which actually arrived, I think just beginning of January, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's December, I think, yeah.
So define lot sizes for various stages of production. So we can specify lots on routing lines, planning worksheets as well, and production orders directly. So it's not a biggie, but it's nice. It's something, again, I've done and use those sizes when calculating duration times. So yeah, I'm not sure whether we'll have to go and help our friends at Netronics do some changes to kind of get their calculations working, taking that into account. But that might be useful in terms of improving the flexibility there. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I noticed, which popped up to me with not a technical head on, but seemed quite a good call. And I think it's something you've been doing already, Matt, was the idea of assisted setups to speed up getting people up and running with Business Central checklists and so on and so forth. You've been building something like that. I'm not sure if it's like for like, but is that's going to be of use, I guess, to get the end user doing more, not reliant on us quite as much for the last little stretch of the implementations, or to get things set up in the foundation stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly about, starting your journey with Business Central. Certainly also some areas of functionality where you may decide to start using something. And looking at some of the details of the release, there's going to be some enhanced kind of pop-ups and kind of guidance through some of the functionality. So I'm not sure how that's going to look yet, but I think the idea is it's beyond just the initial setup, with some templates and wizards, but some kind of guided tutorials as to how to get certain elements set up. So, always good if we can streamline the implementation process.
I remember looking at their roadmap when they publish a bigger roadmap or a longer roadmap. They always seem to have simplification as one of those big key areas, and you always wonder what that actually means in the real world. But I guess an element of this is simplifying some of that feature. I know it's only a small amount.
Yeah, but you, of course, remember they're adding new features all the time. So they're adding new features all the time on one hand, but then trying to simplify it on the other. So it's your endpoint's probably not too far away. But
I think some of the tool sets that are in there, sorry James, have helped us. So if you look at some of the things we've done on Clever products, where you can pop up a message saying, do you want to now set this up and pull in a
notifications?
Pull it.
Yeah, and standard setup that will work out the box that you then just have to tweak rather than setting it up from scratch.
One they specifically mentioned this time: assisted setup helps move the task of adjusting item costs to the background. Adjusting item costs. How many times have we come across a customer who's been running distribution customer, who's been running Nav or Business Central for a while, and suddenly the task of running adjust cost item entries is going to take 16 weeks to go through all of the open inventory entries to get the cost flushed through properly. So if that just encourages a few more customers to turn that on from day one, that's got to be worthwhile, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's caused us major pain to backdate that in the past. So things like that, I think, are great to see. Some of the administration tasks, then, should we move on to those?
Okay.
I laughed a bit at improve the reliability of database export operation for larger databases with more companies. Clearly, that's Microsoft evidencing the pain of being able to grab a backup from the SaaS platform and bring it locally. I guess I've not seen that not work, but I guess customers are not happy when it doesn't. And every customer should be aware that taking a backup of your data is not a bad thing to do with an ERP system on occasion. Microsoft do it for you, but you'd have to go to them to get it restored. And if Azure went down, the chances of that are zero. So I'm not saying you should do it every night, but on occasion it can be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think on that as well, the stuff that goes on in the background, and I know we've had a couple of instances of this where people are trying to move an instance of Business Central to a different Azure Active Directory. Now, Azure Active Directory is typically where your users and your permissions are all set. And obviously, if a company gets acquired or it's been perhaps set to the wrong Azure AD, if there's multiple companies in a group or something like that, now they're making it simpler. I'm not going to say it's going to be pain-free, but it's meant to be a simpler process. It's through Microsoft support, so it's nothing either a partner or an end user can do, but you do have the ability now, from looking at their notes, their release notes, to assign a BC environment to a different Azure AD, and I guess that's going to help. I know our DevOps team have had to do that occasionally.
It helps us, Liam, because we can clean up. So, when Business Central SaaS first came along, you could only set up one instance per for Azure AD. So, we were setting up where you've got kind of multinational instances. We were setting up several Azure ADs simply to host a BC instance to get the different localizations. And then when they introduced, I'm not sure whether it's 16 or 17, where you could have multiple instances. And I think it was 17 where you could have multiple production instances in the same version. Suddenly you've got this retrospective kind of setup from that we'd done from 15 and 16 that we then wanted to transform, and that meant moving between. So now if you're running multiple instances around the world, probably having them in one Azure AD would be the sensible thing to do. And this enables you to tidy that up and get it the way that it should be, and the way you would set it up if you started it now.
Okay. And I guess the other one that they've popped on there, just looking at the list, is this delegated admin. And then that, I imagine, is more beneficial to us as a partner, that our support team or people working on a Business Central instance for a customer are going to be able to do more with the administration, or they can be allocated certain rights to do certain things, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we can, for a SaaS customer, we can log on to their system using our Tecman credentials and if we haven't been on that system before, it'll automatically put our user into their system. It doesn't consume a license, but they have restricted, quite rightly, some of the things that those users can do. But I mean, one of the things that was completely restricted was being able to do anything with job queues. Now, from a support perspective, being able to restart a job queue is quite a regular occurrence. So that's now being allowed. And there's another one, which is you can change the experience. So this is basically whether you've got essentials or premium, and it defines what pages you see. So can I see service management and manufacturing? So useful as a one-off during the initial implementation, but certainly I think that the allowance of restarting job queues is a good step.
I was chuffed to see the run a job queue one time, because that was actually, dare to say, my suggestion when we were having a discussion in the MVP group one time about why we need access to this and where the restrictions. So it's Microsoft security people that have stopped you getting a third party starting a job queue that can run infinitely into the future. They consider that would be a technique that could put a time bomb into a client system for the future and allow you to almost kind of blackmail a client, I guess. So that wasn't permissible. And I said, well, we just need to be able to run the job queue once to make sure it will run. And then, quite happy to get the client to go and click start, but it's a pain when you have to get the client to go click start 5 times before you sort out why exactly it didn't run and all the rest. So really pleased to see that one in there, because I think that will make life a lot easier for clients and for partners as well.
Okay, so that's a good one for all parties involved. I think the other thing that always pops up, and it's great to see it happening, is better performance. Customers love having new features, new functionality. They can do more stuff, but when it's sluggish or when it's slow, that obviously really rattles everybody, because you're trying to get on with your day job. And looking at this, the modern clients are coming down to the web client now. There's going to be better performance on that. I was just reading through the way the screen is loading when you go to a different area on the system. It's only going to load those bits that are that are visible on the screen. As you scroll down, it'll be loading more and more stuff. But it means you get in, you can start working on the role center and go into what you need, rather than having to wait, which we all get annoyed about, as we know.
People have certain expectations now, don't they, around performance, things that they might have accepted, but people have much higher expectations. So it's really good to see that
it's got to be instant, Liz.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the world we live in, isn't it?
Now, yes.
So these people that obviously we're used to dial-up internet.
Yeah, us oldies. Reports running in background as well is one that I think has come back, because I think you could do this from the Windows client, and it's come back to the web client. So having that in the report inbox, and then being able to go, and once it's in the report inbox, you can go and schedule that report as well. So you can take off the pain of actually having to remember to do it at all, if it's a monthly report or daily or weekly or whatever.
Okay, so just to clarify that, I missed a bit of that. I don't know if my internet was breaking up. So you're saying you can start a report, but you can then carry on with something else while that's running away in the background now, rather than having to sit there and watch it do whatever it was doing?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it just does it, and it puts it in your report inbox. And as I say, from there you go schedule it. I think there's a few others. Being able to change the assigned printer before printing a report. It is useful, and the enable cloud printing on the mobile app and from the Teams app. So if you want to print an order acknowledgement because you put it in via your phone or something like that, you can do that. All good stuff. The cloud printing, universal printing. I'm on the fence about that. I think it's a good thing to have, but I'm not sure how many printers out there support universal printing.
Well,
and I'm not sure.
You've got an option though, because I was looking into this the other day, James, that you can. Microsoft have actually got, just like we use with PrintNode, there's a little app you can install if your printers aren't compatible with the universal print system. So on premise, you can install a little bit of software. You point it at your printers locally, and then the cloud can see via this piece of software those printers. So it seems certainly one to go and look at, I think.
So I guess it comes down to what's the cost of print node, which is pretty much nothing. And what's the cost of Azure's universal printing?
At the moment, it's
or an upgrade
free because it's in, Universal Print's free at the moment, but that's because it's in kind of trial mode.
Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. So that's one to watch then, isn't it?
Yeah.
I also like, James, the being a Teams person. I like the fact that now you can search from within Teams, so you're using your search functionality in Teams, and if you've got those connections set up with Business Central, it will search your contacts area. I know we've been able to look and have the little plug-in and put the item cards and all those type of things within Business Central, but if you are using contacts, and I know most people probably should be looking at the full D365 experience for that. But if you are using Business Central for your contacts, it will search those now. You can make phone calls directly if you've got that capability within Teams to a contact within Business Central, and you can share those details across. But I think it just shows the strengthening and the ties that are between Teams and Dynamics. Getting every release, we see them, stuff's becoming embedded more and more with Teams and the other products. But another little feature that's been added.
So development tools then for the real geeks on the call. So I think, the top of my list when I look at that from that perspective has got to be report extensibility. That's got to be a major win in terms of not having to start reports like document layouts, for instance, from scratch, but just being able to add small changes into the data items, the schema layout, and maybe the layout then based on that. So that's, I think that's a big win. I think, being able to add keys, indexes to base tables and table extension tables. So, Liam, we've already talked about like how performance is a pain, and lots and lots of times that comes down to not having the right index, so that it's doing a table scan of every record every time you press enter, which, once your data grows beyond a certain size, can be a real big pain. So we can go put those keys in now to really speed that up, which is great.
I saw quite a bit of excitement about that on Twitter in the dev community. I don't pretend to understand everything that's going on, but I do follow a few of them, and there did seem to be some excitement when that was announced. I just follow them. Makes me feel smarter than I am.
So I guess the one area we haven't talked about is Power Platform.
Yeah, it's one of the areas I haven't looked at.
Yeah, virtual tables. So you can create there's, in effect, it looks like it's looking at the API pages. So within Dataverse, in effect, you can set up a virtual table. So in effect, you're looking at a BC data directly within Dataverse, which is what used to be called Common Data Service, CDS. So it's kind of taken away an integration point. And I believe it respects BC kind of table triggers, so you can insert data, let's say, from a Power App using Dataverse connected through to BC. So data directly into BC, and then use the relevant triggers and business logic that sit behind in BC. So that could be a really interesting one. I think,
virtual tables both ways. So being able to see Business Central tables in D365 and being able to see D365 tables in Business Central as directly rather than replicating data. I mean, we've all know the issues with replicating data and what happens when it gets out of sync, right? And inevitably it always does, and then it's a pain to put right. So being able to do that directly, I think is a major win, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some restrictions on it. So I think you've got to read the small print before you jump feet first into using it. But I think that could be make the integration piece a lot easier.
So I noticed the Power BI connectors working with Business Central APIs instead of with web services only. It's fair to say there's some change coming on Business Central web services. I think SOAP's being discontinued in a couple of years or a year, or I'm not quite sure the time frame.
Who does that impact, James?
Anybody who uses web services. SOAP web services, it wouldn't it? But SOAP was the original web service format standard, if you like, that was introduced in NAV 2009. It's the NAV 2009, the old classic client that supported that kind of you could set up, and it was that, we've been building interfaces into Nav since 2009 in SOAP. It's the most common standard out there at the moment. Now, REST-based web services have come along and replaced it with JSON format and so on. That's the modern way to go. But SOAP being discontinued. Now, they've put a long time frame on this, and they've already extended it after a protest of, do you realise how much this is going to take? But certainly, if you're building any new interfaces into Business Central, you should make them API REST-based web services. I think that's absolutely clear that that's the future. And any SOAP ones you've got, think about how you're going to slowly deprecate those. That for me, that's going to be a major task, because with some of that, you've got two parties. You're not making that interface. It's typically not Business Central that's talking to a Business Central web service. It's some external application. And so you've got to go and get whoever looks after that external application to change that interface. And that's not always, the timing of that is not always on your control. We've already seen a couple. We were talking to a client last week, Liz, where actually they didn't have the capability to talk to REST because the other application was somewhat old, shall we say. So, that meant a real kind of back to basics of rebuilding the other end before we rebuild interface in this end. So, that's a precursor of a future challenge, I think, that's on the way. But to bring it back, item availability from Business Central to Dynamics 365 Sales, so you can see how many you've got in D365 for sales when you're doing a quote within CRM, which has got to be good, hasn't it? How could you do a sales order without seeing how many you've got? Isn't that Basics 101? But it's now there, so that's good.
I think just covering that as well, we try and talk about all the areas of Dynamics that technology management get involved in. You've touched a little bit there on the sales and the customer service side of it, as in what we used to call CRM. I think we're planning to do a blog, a podcast, and probably a blog as well, a podcast around the changes that are coming in that with the Wave 1 release, because they also get an update in the springtime. So I think we'll do that as a separate podcast in the next week or two. So we'll flush that out a little bit more. Okay, is there anything else that stands out? Or
well, good news if you need Greece, India, Romania or Turkey localisation. I know we've got at least one customer that does.
Yeah, so those are the new localizations. They'll be shipping around that time as well. It's amazing how many emails we get from different people. Someone asked me about yesterday over the weekend that someone said, do we do a Jordan version because it's not available on SaaS in the Jordan at the moment. So it's not on the list, so I'll have to go back with bad news, but maybe in the autumn they might get around to doing something over there. But it's good those countries have been added. Great to see the reach that Business Central's getting, isn't it, when you see these countries and where we're getting requests from.
The easier it is, the more likely it is to roll out. And why wouldn't you do that global rollout if you need it in that country? It's great to see. Enablement of word merge in Business Central.
It's back.
Ooh, it's like 1999.
Well, I mean, it's simple, but pulling data about the recipients from Business Central. You can word mail merge to personalize each document. So your customers and contacts as part of a sales campaign. So I think that might be useful for somebody, and I'll be interested to see the technology they've used there, because maybe that can be adapted for better credit control letters or something of that nature that actually might be even more useful.
If people would have seen 4 directors of an IT company trying to mail merge labels just before Christmas.
From the HR part of to send to employers, just wanted a label to stick on an envelope, but it did take a while, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
But hey, we should put that on the BC Ideas site so they save our blushes. We did get it eventually, and it was easier than we thought it was, but we don't do it very often. Anyway, with enough excuses, this whole process of announcing the roadmap, how well do you think it works, people?
Well, I think from the consultants, generally the community, the consultants, the developers are, as soon as they see it, they're onto it and trying to understand what's coming, getting excited about some of the things. I think it works well for the the reseller community? I'm not sure about.
For customers, I think from the customer's point of view, it's our job to take this information that we're given, of which some of it is fluff, and pick out what is going to be valuable and what people should be looking at.
Do you think there's enough detail? Or, I mean, you can see that from both perspectives, right? Because Microsoft don't want to give the detail because they don't want to reveal all of the kind of the new release in one go, and maybe they haven't finished writing it yet.
Well, I was just about to say, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is it all finished? Could it change before release? They're not going to give screenshots and detailed instructions on how to use it. So I think it is. It's up to us to interpret it, and also to pick up things that are potentially affecting the direction of travel, and things that, whilst they might not be changing now, are things like the integration we talked about that people need to be considering, need to be thinking about. And that's up to us, I think, sometimes to read between the lines and educate customers about that, and about the things that they might read and think don't affect them, but they do.
Yeah, and planning for projects, don't go do a customization for something that's on the roadmap. Wait and see what it is till it arrives and all the rest of it. So, having been in the community for a good few years now, I think this is a reasonable compromise. I think the partner and the end user community will always want more detail. Microsoft would probably like, in preference, to give them absolutely nothing, but at least we get enough to be able to kind of plan and understand what we need to go look at when that release becomes available. And it will only be a few weeks now. I'm not sure exactly when, but you'll be able to go spin up a sandbox with a preview. So if you're on SaaS, or to come back to a recurring theme of this podcast, if you have your maintenance on a CSP EP agreement, where you have a cloud sandbox that you could go use, even though you don't use it, you could go and create a preview and have a look. And why wouldn't you? If you think it's something that might affect and going to be useful.
Yeah, I think the quicker we get to access to it, like you said, James, and then end users can start to have a play with it. This is almost, to me, it's like the teaser trailer. It's giving you the route of direction that Microsoft are going. I know there's a bunch of caveats about what may and may not come in there, but you can see where they're heading towards. And as soon as we get to have a play with it, then it's always good, and we understand it a little bit better. But I think to get out there and share with people what they're planning, I think it's really important service that we need to do for our customers, so they can understand what they need to do to take advantage of as well. I think as well with the clients, we've always had a little bit of pushback with going to the web clients. You're constantly seeing the improvement on that. I mean, the one that we didn't touch on there, but you can actually double click on something in the web client on certain things now, and it'll take you through. We're all used to double clicking for the last 25 years of our life to go into something. So
it's natural instinct, isn't it? That
and to bring that in, it's only a small thing on the list, but for a lot of people, if it's the first time they've used the web client, they'll sit there, double click. Why isn't it working? So, as you said, it's natural instinct, and to see that starting to appear.
My developer's hat on, Liam. You used to have to code that double click, right? And what they're saying now, it'll just double click. So it's a property set up, and that will work. So potentially that's a developer productivity enhancement as well, where they've got less to actually go think about and code, which is great.
Cool.
It's the way it should be going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Okay, well,
pull that around. Thanks everybody for listening, and tune in next time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
bye.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you. Bye-bye.